This meeting is being recorded.
All right, guys, I'm going to get ready to share my screen with you as well.
I don't know why, but that scares me every time. I'm just never expecting it.
Cody's outside. It must be warm there.
Cody's not outside.
I wouldn't be on this call if I was outside. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would be bundled up somewhere. No, I'm in the party room. It's just the glare from the sun.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, just thumbs up if you can hear me. All right. It's really sunny right there, Cody. Woo! I'm looking at your camera. Blinded. I'm gonna put some sunglasses on. I'll have you shift just a little bit to your left. Okay. All right, I just won't look at your screen. That's fine. No worries. I don't want sun in your eyes either, but all right, guys. Well, thank you for joining the call. I definitely want to keep it under an hour for you guys and kind of move through this particular call here. This is call number 13, I believe. And we're going to talk about leveling up your leadership. And there's a multitude of ways you can do that. We're just going to talk about one way in particular that you can do that in your park. And so leveling up your leadership looks like many things. But first, let's break the ice. Would love for each of you to join in on this. You can chat using the chat function, or you can go ahead and just unmute yourself. Would love to hear from you as well. It's always nice to hear somebody other than myself. But I want to just kind of open up the call here. What is your favorite part of Thanksgiving dinner? And so dinner specifically, we'll talk about food again. Is it the turkey? Is it a dish that's a favorite of yours that somebody makes that you look forward to all year round? But what is your favorite part of Thanksgiving dinner?
Macaroni and cheese, hands down.
Who makes a good macaroni and cheese?
My mom.
All right, all right. What's special about it?
I have no idea. Nobody else's mac and cheese even compares.
Just mix it with love and spice and everything nice, right?
Yep. Well, that and sweet potato pie is also really good.
Ooh, sweet potato pie. Yeah, my mother-in-law makes a really good sweet potato pie, man. That's where it's at. My wife makes a really good stuffing I look forward to every year. I could probably eat stuffing more than just that once a year, but yeah. Mashed potatoes are always really good too. I'm big on the sides for sure. What else we got here? Ooh, we got another mac and cheese. You got somebody else macking and cheesing with you there, Cody. What else? What else? Sweet potato ganache. Okay, all right. Welcome to the call, Camden. Yeah. All right, yeah, Daniel. So your family, usually after you eat, you play games that your mom makes up, and we just have a ton of fun. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Mashed potatoes. Way to go, Kenzie. Yeah, mashed potatoes is where it's at. I enjoy that as well. Awesome. Time with your family. Absolutely. Is that Stephanie or Aaron or both? Aaron, you're around your family quite a bit, aren't you? Watching the Lions play as well.
That was with Stephanie.
I figured as such. I know her family's always kind of extended and a little further out. So watching the Lions play as well. Yeah, if you like that kind of misery, yes.
Hey, we're on a 3-game winning streak right now, so.
I know. Just a matter of time. I'm sorry. I've learned to not be let down as much, so I'm proactively just prepare for it. As sad as that sounds out loud to say, but all right, apple pie a la mode. Excellent, awesome. And knowing my Bulldogs would be playing for a national title. There you go, there you go. All right, very cool. Well, excellent, guys. Thank you so much for answering that. If you haven't, please feel free to answer that break the ice question before we get rocking and rolling on this call. So without further ado, guys, what is a leader? Well, by call 13, if we haven't really defined that for you, we've talked about a lot in the form of leadership. What is leadership? It's just multifaceted. It's long-reaching. It's always being defined for us in different ways, in different capacities. Sort of the textbook definition, Webster's 1828 edition, tells us leader is, well, it's one that leads. Imagine that. Or conducts, a guide, a conductor. Another thing you could look at is a chief, a commander, a captain, sort of more war language around it, going to war, someone who's leading somebody into battle, and really even one who goes first. They're the leader, they're in front, they're going first. And so that's many ways in which we can look at leadership. But beyond that, what else? Is that it? Well, no, of course not. In fact, leadership is, like I said, multifaceted. It's everything from guiding to giving solutions, casting vision, teamwork, giving direction, strategy, communicating and communication, and really goal setting and following up with said goals. Leadership is all encompassing. It's multifaceted. So today, as we kind of dive into things, and before we do, of course, want to go over my vision and the mission, our mission. We know the vision. We've talked about it since first call. It remains the same as far as when it comes to leadership and what we're trying to develop. That's what we're seeing down the road, is that we have a mission as well. It's how we get to where we're going. And again, that requires something from us each and every time. It requires us to position ourselves. It looks like something when we start to, we're entering into more people jumping in the call. That's awesome. That's great to see. But the mission, right? It's something we have to do. It's a way we have to position ourselves. It looks like something when we prepare to be led and for those around us to follow us as leaders. It looks like something. And so that's the mission as well as the vision as well. So moving on from here, guys, I really thought this was a nice quote. It's someone I quoted before, Chad Veach, has a book called Help I Work With People. It's really a nice book overall, but your authority comes less from your ability and more from your authenticity. Really like that choice expression because there is no shortage of podcasts, Audible books, no shortage of YouTube things you can watch. I can give you many. I have many books myself that I read into and I look into. So there's no shortage of materials out there for you to really just kind of look to and look towards. There are people who are speaking on leadership, and it's interesting. There are some individuals who do great TED Talks, and I always kind of question, well, what's their background? Where's the credibility in what they're saying? Some would surprise you. They're quoted often, and they don't really have a lot of leadership background, but they're just really good at speaking about leadership. And so that's also one of the challenges with leadership, is that individuals who are great orators, who have great ideas, big thinkers, may not have much of a background that supports it. And funny enough, they're the ones that many of us, myself included, have looked to for leadership advice, and they have almost no credibility. So you got to be careful who you're pulling from, because there's lots of good theory out there, but not a lot of good practical application of the theory. And so authenticity, the ability to say, I've done this before, I've been there before, is huge, right? So authority comes less from your ability, what you know and how you know it, and more from your authenticity. So just as a quick review, guys, last time we talked about transactional leadership, we talked about transformational leadership, and making positive relational deposits. Just to back that up a little bit, really what that means is transactional leadership is what it looks like and what it sounds like. It's a transaction. It's cause and effect. You do one thing and it causes something to occur. Transformational leadership is also what it sounds like. It's you're creating change around something. That's a little bit more of a slow moving, more of a purposeful, intent-filled way of relating to someone in a leadership position. You're transforming something, you're changing certain dynamics, and then making a positive relational deposit. That did something for me because I realized I had to be more keen to do this in my day-to-day coaching of my leaders. Really just making sure that I make space for positive relational deposits. And some simple things that you could do with your team are, not just knowing their names. Obviously, you know who you're working with, but knowing things like their birthdays, knowing what they're having for Thanksgiving dinner, just having those little sidebar conversations. It's one way to make a positive relational deposit. Don't look past the scope of your leadership and what you say and how it matters to those you lead. It matters to them. And it often matters big time, and you just don't know it, right? So you have influence in ways that you just don't know. So that was the review for you. Now, time for action, guys. This is the 5% steps. This is how we stay in that elite company of 5%ers versus the 83% that know we need to do leadership development at all levels, but fail to do so. So it takes action beyond the talk. Commit to a routine way of being fed. Stay hungry. This is all from last call. We talked about listing out those who you report to. And are you making more deposits with those relationships or just withdrawals on a routine basis? If you weren't on the last call, please go back to the YouTube channel and you can watch that at a later time. But we talk about deposits or withdrawals. And then intentionally coach 2 team members this week. Be ready to share on the next call. So this is that call. We'll kind of commit to that last point here and just open up the line because, again, give me some time to not be the one talking the whole time and just really see who's been coaching out there. What does that look like for you? Let's talk about those individuals you've intentionally coached and how it's gone for you. And I'll open up the line for anybody who wants to share. And feel free to use the chat if you don't want to be so bold as to open up and unmute yourself. But would love to hear about those intentionally coaching. Doesn't have to be something massive. It could be something small.
I'll go. So I picked a couple people that we've promoted recently. And one thing that I learned when I was coaching basketball is that the plays per se don't actually matter. It's the relationships that you have. And there was something that they always say, it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmy and Joe's, meaning that it's about those relationships that Lance kind of mentioned earlier. So that was the first thing I told them. They were, I asked them how their training was going, and they said, yeah, I feel like I have a good understanding of roller and the 12 systems. And I was like, okay, that's good. I said, the most important thing though is making sure that people see you, that you go up and talk to them, you say hi. Even when you're critiquing them, you don't have to just tell them, don't do that. There's a way to do that as well. That builds rapport with them and doesn't just tear them down. So that was something that they said that, that wasn't something they had thought about much. And I said, that's probably the largest part of the job is that part. So.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Absolutely. I don't know if I lost you or if you muted yourself. That was kind of an abrupt pull away. There you go.
I'm getting an oil change, so I got to pull into the bay now.
That was dramatic effect. It's like you fell off. It was like drop the mic moment. All right. Well, you get that oil change, man. Got to keep the cars running. Awesome. Well, thank you for the share, Devin. I appreciate it. Who else? Who else has done some intentional coaching? You guys are all leaders. You run shifts. No matter how small, there's just it's just not, you can't look past those small encounters is what I'm saying, right? What's a coaching moment for you out there, no matter how big or small?
I mean, I don't know. You said no big or small. I mean, I coach all the time. Anytime I'm here, whether it be on cash, which to be honest is mostly where I like to be at, just because that's where most of the conflict happens. So most of the conflict resolution should be there because that's where they're going to come if they have any issues. So I like to stay up there just to mitigate that, as well as that's where our party check-in is. So, I mean, it could be a number of things. Most of the time I'm on cash. So I'm like, hey, make sure, because a lot of times, you ask, hey, do you guys have Sky Zone socks? I always tell my cashiers, they need, you guys need to ask them if you can see their Sky Zone socks, because they'll say they have Sky Zone socks, but then they're air time, and then they're going to get mad. They have to come back down to get socks. So I always say, make sure you say, can I see them? I always make sure that if they're not busy with another customer, as soon as somebody comes in, say, hey, welcome to Sky Zone. Just small things like that.
Yeah, no, again, that's great. We do this all day, every day. Sometimes we overlook it, we miss it. Some are more prone to do it than not do it. And just for the record, that individual was already angry walking up to you because they had gone to airtime. So, yeah. Oh, well. Boom. Man, oh man, sometimes it's Monday, right? I got it good. All right. Excellent. Well, hey, I hope you guys are willing to unmute yourself as the call kind of proceeds, if only because we're going to be talking about coaching on this call. We did a little blip on coaching really early on. If you can look way back to May or June or whenever that was, that we kind of started this. And I think it was call 3 or 4 that we talked about coaching. It was Coaching Crash Course, if you recall. And we're not going to go back to that, but yeah, we're going to expand on that even further. And hopefully this will be helpful for you. So before we move forward, there's at least 6 different leadership approaches. This has been well known for many years. There was a number of studies, especially in the early 2000s. And one of those leadership approaches was coaching. And it's often not used. And so we're going to focus on coaching because this one approach is actually really beneficial when we utilize it, but there's a reason why we don't utilize it as much as we should. In fact, a number of studies behind that have shown that when we coach, the results are just incredible on behalf of the employee, on behalf of the business at large, and the bottom line itself. So we're going to focus on coaching and kind of go through that. And one of the things I'm going to kind of reflect on, I don't do this a whole lot, but I'm going to reference a book called The Coaching Habits, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. This particular speaker has some TED Talks out there. This is a book that kind of, as an avid reader myself, I've had this book presented to me multiple times by individuals who are key in my life, mentors that I've had over the years, not knowing they were all kind of working from a similar number of books. This was one of them. And so I've recently started diving into this book and felt it would be worthwhile to approach at least some concepts presented in this book and present it to you guys, but it's available to you as well. So The Coaching Habits, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. There's a number of questions we're going to go through that are from this book. There'll be some things that I go outside of this book as well, as I just give some of my own thoughts and really contextualize it to our business and what we do every day. But hey, you know, if someone else has done it better out there, for sure, why not pull from them? And of course, so The Coaching Habit is a book that I'm going to rely on a little bit for this call and possibly for the next call as well. And off to the races we go. So coaching should be short, simple, and intensely practical. Often that's not the case though. Often coaching can feel long-winded, not really all that simple, and can be very large on theory and not really practical. And that's not helpful. So we want to make it short, simple, and intensely practical, which means coaching then is not needed to be drawn out. Avoid advice giving by staying curious. Now that's a topic that the writer of Coaching Habit talks about a whole lot. Sort of the, I think, the main point in which he's trying to avoid giving advice, which is kind of just interesting when you say it out loud. It's really ironic. Is not the reason why we're coaching, right? We're trying to give advice, but he would say stay curious longer, and for a number of reasons, which I'll go into. But remain cognizant as well of where the person is mentally, emotionally, and relationally to you. I believe that's important as well. Know your people. Get to know them. Have small talk. Get to know what draws them in and what they're pursuing in the business beyond just a paycheck. We know a paycheck's part of it, right? So avoid advice giving by staying curious and remaining cognizant of where the person is mentally, emotionally, relationally to you. Beyond that, guys, don't be this. We're not talking about the coach yelling and screaming from the sidelines. There is a place for that in certain sports, right? We see it in sports. Many of my athletes, I know Devin, who has coached many times over in his past life, knows that type of coaching. Not saying he was that kind of coach, but we've all seen the memes of coaches on the sidelines, blood leaving their face, or maybe too much blood going into their face as they're yelling and screaming and losing it all in the name of a game, right? We're not looking to be that kind of coach, and we'll break this open even further. All right, so what is your biggest challenge to coaching? When you hear that, something rises up inside you and you go, there'll be some that go, absolutely, that's amazing. I love coaching. I do it all day, every day. I think I'm even great at it. And there'll be some that go, nope, you're the same ones that were quiet early on, don't want to talk about it. I haven't coached 2 people. He told me to do it last time. Spoiler, I will ask you to do it again at the end of this call for the next 2 weeks. You'll intentionally coach 2 people. But what is your biggest challenge to coaching? Feel free to add that to the chat. Unmute yourself if you want to be bold. But what is your biggest challenge to coaching? Because there is a challenge to it. For some, it's bigger. For some, it's not so big of an issue. But what is your biggest challenge to coaching?
I'd say mine is just patience. A lot of times I have to remember that even though they're old enough to have a job, they're still kids. I could tell somebody, I could coach somebody 1,000 times till I'm blue in the face, but they'll still stay. Like for some reason, they'll still stand there and watch somebody jump in the same square as somebody for a second before doing anything about it. It blows my mind. But so honestly, patience is probably my biggest challenge with coaching.
Awesome. And I'm seeing the chat come alive. Appreciate that too. Thank you. I got yours, Daniel. Got yours as well, Hannah. Excellent all the way around. Very good, Camden. Awesome.
I felt
Yeah, that's a big one. Finding a way for the younger generation to understand and get the point. It takes lots of time sometimes. Absolutely, Camden. Yeah, we could do a whole call on that for sure. Awesome. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I felt like what Cody said really hit a nerve. As of recently, I've been really finding that even though I've taken certain individuals aside and coached them, like trained them from the ground up, I'm still running into like where they seem oblivious to what they're supposed to do. And so I guess organizing myself enough to, come back through, recoach the coach, that becomes a big challenge for me.
Yeah. We are in a noisy business, a fast moving business. And sometimes it's fast moving in just the bodies that come through, the bodies that work for us, right? Retention can be concerning. And so you have sort of this flurry of activity and people coming in and people leaving and people not showing up for shifts. And then you're trying to coach and you're trying to be patient on a business that's always pressing, always pushing. We move at a quick clip. We know that. And so patience is a big part of that. And it's hard to have the patience in the eye of the storm as it goes, right? Definitely could be a press and a pull on each and every one of us. One thing I would allude to, I don't have it up on the screen. I was trying to look for it real quickly, but if you recall, I had a stat up there that was the different ways to teach and train down. It was like there was a 90% approach to things where you can get 90% retention of a skill that's been taught. If you're unsure of what I'm talking about, I can share that with you after the call, but I thought that slide was really helpful. I actually presented on that, I think, twice. Just if you roll into your training approach, your coaching approach, sort of that way of doing things, you're going to get like a 90% just retention of whatever it is you're training. But again, that takes time up front, but you don't pay for it down the road, right? So I think that's a key thing to look at for sure. So just think about what is your biggest challenge to coaching. Let that kind of stew through you here through this call. But what is your biggest challenge to coaching? Be thinking about that. So I want to talk for a moment about the advice monster. Again, this relates back to that book that we'll be referencing called The Coaching Habit. And the advice monster really is this thing that's trying to, sabotage your leadership ability. It's always kind of creeping around. It's trying to take hold of the conversation, the coaching moment that you're in. The advice monster wants to be in control. I just mentioned that. It actually parades around as that's a good thing. I want to be in control. It always thinks it has the answer and it wants to be the hero because not all superheroes wear capes, right? Advice is good, but actually listening to others and allowing them to be a part of the solution is paramount. And so sort of the crux of really good coaching is being willing to listen with intent to not always solve the problem, although often that feels good, right? I want to play the hero. I want to swoop in. I want to save the day. But that gets tiresome. And it gets tiresome pretty quickly. I know early on in my career, whether I was a supervisor or in this world, being an ops manager, then a GM, or even in the regional world, when I first started kind of cutting my teeth, it was great to be the hero, swoop in, save the day. I got all the answers, even though I didn't. I just, try to, position myself like I did. It was extremely stressful for me, and it became very cumbersome and just overall not the kind of leader I wanted to be in the long haul. Was I didn't want to always play the hero. And maybe you find yourself in a similar situation. I don't want to be the guy with always like looking like I have the answers. That is tiresome. And at the end of the day, it can make this job that you enjoy a job you hate. So again, the advice monster, as good natured as it is, wants to be the hero. And because there's an internal bias, you can almost always think you have the best advice. I have the right advice. I know I do. Well, no, that's not always the case. So advice is good to give, but one thing we're going to talk about is slowing down long enough to ask really good questions and help them realize that they may have the solutions to what they're going through. So 7 questions. We won't talk about all these today, so please take heart here. It's 1:31 on my time, 12:30 your time. We're not going to go through all 7. We just don't have the time for that today. But we are going to focus on at least 3 of these. One is called the Kickstart question that he references. The other one is the awe question that stands for something. You'll see it here in a moment. And then the focus question. And you can do this in any order, but really one reason why we don't coach is because we struggle to know how to start. So just to start the conversation, it can feel like this massive effort in front of us to just say, hey, how do I coach somebody? How do I, unless something really is shouting at you, it can be challenging to jump into coaching someone. And so the Kickstart question is a great way to get sort of an inroad into coaching an individual. It's what's on your mind. And really that's just the question there, right? What is on your mind? Now, what's on your mind is really not saying, hey, tell me anything or everything. We're not looking for that. You're not looking to get everything and anything from said person. That's not what we're looking for. It's really about what are they worried about right now? What's on their mind? It's a great way to open things up. It opens up the conversation. It gets things going. What's on your mind is a great Kickstarter just to getting the other questions moving. Oddly enough, because I've had people mentor me over the years, and a lot of them were using this book not knowing it, or I didn't know it rather, they fully knew it. I now look back at some of these conversations I've had, some great conversations that were eye-opening for me and my growth and my development, and it came from questions like this: what's on your mind? It just opened it up, and often could lead to me just having a flood of things coming out of me. And so, again, it's one way to open things up, but if we're not careful, it can be a flood of things. And that's why we have some of these other questions. So the other question that we'll talk about is the awe question, which is really, and what else? If you were worried about the floodgates opening up, this one even adds further flooding, so to speak, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And what else comes in after? Usually, right? And what else? So someone, you ask, hey, what's on your mind? They kind of give you a number of items. This is what's on my mind about why that party went poorly, or why that guest interaction at the register did not go to plan, why we had an issue, why the courts are looking the way they're looking right now, why I can't maintain them. Well, and what else? What else is great for when, they've given you what they thought was their solution, but there still seems to be a hanging issue, a hanging problem. What else? It allows you to stay curious longer, stay genuine, really lean in to listen, to hear. It's a great self-management tool for that reason, right? It keeps the advice monster quiet because it's not about you giving them the answer, playing the hero, swooping in to save the day. It's like, hey, self-management tool. I'm going to keep myself in check. What else? What else is going on? What else can we do? It buys you that bit more time to assess and allows the conversation to go deeper. Great way to look at this is when people do have solutions, or they feel like they have a solution, but they still seem like they have something going on under the surface. They may say, I did this and I tried that and I'm still having conflict with this other team member. Well, you tried all that, but what else? That what else allows them to dive a little further, a little deeper. Beyond that, guys, there's the focus question. And that's really where we get to the meat of things. And what's the real challenge here for you? And we'll even dial it back a little further. When we ask this question, it really should look like, what's the real challenge? what's the real challenge? Here's the Kickstarter. What's on your mind? They let you know. This is what's going on. This is the issue. Sometimes we know exactly what we're looking for when we ask that question, by the way, the Kickstarter. What's on your mind around this issue? What's going on here? Those are another ways you can frame it, right? But what's the real challenge? Because people are working really hard solving the wrong problems. And that's why we want to get to the details. We want to dive in a little further just to see what are we trying to solve. First problem is not usually the problem. It's usually a symptom of a bigger issue. It's the first thing they go to. It's the thing that's the closest to them. It's the biggest issue they're having right now. But the reality is the fire started somewhere else, right? What's the catalyst? What's the source of it? Again, what's the symptom of the larger issue, the disease, right? That's what's really helpful about the focus question. And really it builds into other questions. So what's the real challenge can turn into what's the real challenge here? What's the real challenge for you right here, right now? This is a great way to help them solve the issue that's in front of them. So moving on, guys, we're going to come back to a question I asked not too long ago. What is your biggest challenge to coaching? Maybe you've had some time to think through that. Hopefully you've had. But what's your biggest challenge to coaching? What is your biggest challenge to coaching? Have you thought about that since we've last talked here about it? Or another way to frame it is, what is on your mind about coaching right now? Would love for you to unmute yourself, be bold, or even add to the chat. That's more than fine as well. But what is on your mind about coaching right now? And thank you for the share on the QBQ. Appreciate that. I've picked up that one before as well. Thank you, Patrick. Awesome.
I'll go ahead, Lance. Yeah, so for me, my biggest thing on coaching that I always consider before I go up to an employee, whether it's big or small, is everybody hears things in different ways. And I just always want to make sure that I'm connecting to that employee in the way that they learn. I mean, just from Saturday, there is a situation where I was about to have to fire one of my best employees, because sometimes you just have to do that. And, I was able to work it out and just make it a big coaching moment and how we can move forward and stuff. But it's always, I always reflect on, okay, how am I going to talk to this person? Because every employee is different. I mean, this employee is probably going to think about this for the next 2 months because that's who they are. So it's just always finding the best ways to, I don't know, just kind of connect and get on that specific employee's level. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. Absolutely. I think the relational dynamics are huge here, right? It's not one size fits all. It's not paint by numbers. We're dealing with the high variable, which is people at the end of the day, right? Awesome. Thank you. What is on your mind about coaching if you haven't shared yet? Anyone?
I'm really looking at this and it just feels like such a different way of approaching things from how I always have. So right now I'm just looking forward to practicing this to a deeper level in this order. And I know it's not a one size fits all, but I really want to develop in these areas. So yeah, that's on my mind right now, just looking through it. And I'm like, yeah, that actually might be really getting it, like what's on your mind, getting them just to unload. Because I just want I want them to figure out the best way to relate to them in order to coach them.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation. It is a different approach, right? It's not even traditional in the sense of like how we might envision a coach. And again, I know doing coaches injustice here by saying they're yelling from the sidelines. It doesn't always look that way, but it kind of veers in that counselor kind of area, right? It's coaching, it's kind of like counseling. And again, I know we only have so much time and space. I'm not saying pull out the long couch, clipboard and all, and take notes, but really listening with a level of intent and not just coming at things with, I have the solution. I have the best advice. The reality is often the individual on the other end can find the answer for themselves, and its leadership is reproduction, we know that we want to cultivate solution-based thinking within our team. So that's awesome. What else is on your mind about coaching out there? Anybody else? And thank you for the share, Stephanie and Hannah. Appreciate you guys unmuting, and for the shares coming in. Appreciate that as well. Rock and roll. Thinking about Thanksgiving already, food and all. Yeah, it's a good one, Camden. Sometimes it's difficult to connect and have them want to learn. Absolutely.
Hi, I got something to share as far as what's on my mind. This is Jay from Fort Lauderdale. There's a lot of times when I talk with my staff members, I ask them, well, just talk with me. What can I do? Talk to me. How can I help you? And sometimes I get, oh, well, there's nothing, but clearly there's something. So I try my best to just talk to them. Anytime I ask them to do something, I always make sure of myself. I'm very hard on myself to make sure that I say, hey, can you please do this? Please and thank you. I appreciate it. I always say that. So that way I know nobody could ever come back to me and say, oh, hey, you're ordering me around. I never say anything about ordering anybody around because I'm always saying, hey, please, thank you. I appreciate it. Or I appreciate you at the end of whatever statement that I say.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's huge. Yeah, and I know it's not to summarize exactly what you said, but yeah, the please and thank yous go a long way. Yeah, no, it's really good. And again, inviting them into this is as much about you making a decision to do said thing versus me ordering you around. We're partnering here, right? I need you just as you need us. And it goes beyond the paycheck, right? As we're trying to build culture. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, great. Thank you for the shares. Had a few of you share. Appreciate that, at least out loud. That's awesome. We'll build on that, guys. And so what else? So Stephanie, what else? You gave your thoughts. What else? What else about the things you just said?
Why you gotta be that way?
Jedi mind tricks.
What'd you say?
It's a Jedi mind trick.
So, I read what Hannah had written with I'm definitely the advice monster sometimes. And as I was even reading through, the sheet that you put together, I was like, that's me. I like being the hero, and that is exhausting to me. And I simply, I can't just turn that off with ease, but now kind of recognizing that that's what that is, it is very exhausting. And just seeing that, having that out in front of me, to me is kind of a big deal, where I'm actually, and I've been realizing that a lot recently, where I'm actually probably hurting the people because I'm just so apt to be okay, here's how you do this. Here's how you do this, instead of having them come to me and say, here's my, here's what I think. Here's what I think I could do. They're just so used to being able to come to me and be like, what do I do, Steph? What do I do? What do I do? And I tend to get pulled in many different directions because I'm I'm the hero. I can do it all.
Yes. Like I said, probably when I look back at my career leading, managing, one of my more defining moments was when I kind of came to that conclusion of, it was great to play hero for a little while. I don't want to play hero anymore. Literally, that was the part in which I was I really enjoy what I do. And I'm but there's something about, I kind of went through this without knowing it. Like I said, I've had mentors in my life that kind of worked through these questions with me. I was they're up to something. What are they doing? And this was very helpful for me. I was yeah, it got me thinking, I don't want to play hero all the time. And I'm creating little monsters, not advice monsters even, but little monsters in that they're all so dependent on me that they're not really necessarily standing on their 2 feet. And yeah, be a source of strength, be a source of advice. And that's great, that's fine, but also be willing to stay curious a little bit longer and ask the right questions and let them walk some of this out. Really, really helpful. Because yeah, playing hero could become a drag at some point. It really can. What else, Hannah? What else?
Yeah, I mean, just really kickstarting off of what you and Stephanie just talked about. I mean, all the notes that I took for today are on the all question, the what else section that we're on. And I mean, just from like Saturday, I had 3 team leads, 2 managers, and myself here all at the same time at one point, and I still was hearing my name every 30 seconds. And that's because I'm the one they want to go to. I'm usually the nicest about it, you know, and I'm always like, yeah, here's the answer. Here's what you do. And so for me personally, I just need to work on just letting them kind of dive deeper into what's the issue, you know, why is that happening with your party, why isn't that guest listening to you, you know, and just really letting them dive deeper along with me on what the problem is. So that's definitely my what else, and the what else is definitely what I'm taking away the most today, and definitely going to share with my team, because I just find us always just like, well, here, just go do this, or well, this is how you do it. It's like really quickly and moving on through the day rather than, you know, really taking that time. So
Yeah. And again, to be really good coaching, keeping it short and simple. What else doesn't have to look like a cup of coffee and let's like go hang out for 45 minutes to discuss, right? And we know that that's just not practical. There's a time and space for that from time to time, but yeah, it just looks like being intentional and realizing where are we potentially robbing those that we lead of the opportunity to really cultivate solution-based thinking and to actually maybe have the answer. It may not be the exact answer you have for them in that moment, but that's okay. May find out that their answer is maybe better. We never know, right? But it's really good to cultivate that.
absolutely.
Moving into the next question, what is the real challenge here for you then? So what is the real challenge for those that shared? And, you know, Mark, I know I didn't hit you with that second question there, or Jay, I didn't hit you with that second question here, but I'm sure you were thinking it once I went to Stephanie and then Hannah. But what is the real challenge here for you then? And maybe you've already vocalized that, but it's worth recapping. What is the real challenge for you in this moment? Is it slowing down? Is it, you know, what is it on your end that you need to maybe be a little bit more intentional about? Can go with any one of you 3, whoever wants to share. What's the real challenge here for you?
My biggest challenge in this is going to be, as you said, slowing down. And as I've been recognizing recently, especially as I'm going through the weekend, is on these, like actually being very intentional about organizing when I'm going to talk to people about certain things, organizing the training and the coaching times. There needs to be a lot of intentionality around that, like a lot of it. And having that kind of set in stone. Sure, there's going to be wiggle room, but if it's not set, then I'm just going to keep going in a circle that I'm going in right now, and that isn't helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate the share. And yeah, the intentionality at the end of this call, you know, one of the 3 action steps you'll take is, again, 2 people you'll coach in the next 2 weeks. Again, I don't think that's a whole lot to ask. We're gonna have a busy week ahead of us with Thanksgiving break. But just be intentional and say, hey, today I'm gonna solidify. I'm talking with so-and-so. I'm looking at the schedule. They're here on Friday, and we're talking about this set area. Or you may just say, hey, what's on your mind about cashiering, or what's on your mind about the challenges around court monitoring, or whatever, right? Being more intentional and actually putting aside that time and not being as reactive where the business is happening to you, but you are happening to the business and to those that help drive our business, right? Our people. So yeah, that's great. I appreciate the share. Awesome. Anyone else? Jay or Hannah? Draw straws.
Not to keep copying Stephanie, but I feel like me and her are similar in just the way we coach and, you know, engage with our team. But yeah, the biggest challenge for me is not knowing it all and just really slowing down. Like, and like I was saying earlier, just giving the employee the chance to kind of develop those thoughts for themselves. Because I always struggle with, I know all the answers, I'm doing 10,000 things, just here, or sometimes even like, oh, don't worry about it, I'll do it later, or however that might go. So really slowing down and just taking the time, even if I feel all over the place, for sure. And just letting and that helps the employee develop more and, be an independent thinker and things like that. So that's definitely my challenge. Same as Stephanie.
Yeah, it's a fine line. And I know, we all know this, but it's worth saying out loud. It's not absolving yourself of responsibility, your point of authority in the business, the sphere that you influence. It's not abandoning your position, hiding out in the office. We know all this, but I'm going to vocalize it. It is, though, about really, like I said, stepping back, slowing down, being intentional with who you're coaching and allowing them to kind of work things out. And you might be surprised when they come out the other end with the solution. And more importantly, they'll be surprised that they were able to come to a solution.
I just have something to add. I'm like the complete opposite of Hannah and Stephanie. I've been doing this a long time. I'm 37 now, so I've been doing it a long time. Patrick's laughing.
37. Get out of here.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I used to be like you guys, but I just came to a point where it was like, I just have to trust what we're coaching. I have to trust that we put the people in the right position to do the right things and that they know what they're doing because we coach them and train them. So, yeah, I just kind of honestly, if they come in the office, if I'm there and where it be, and they ask me a question, I'm like, well, you can solve that, or, yeah, I mean, because it's the same thing that happens to Hannah happens to me. There could be Patrick, Amelia, Marissa, all of our leads in the building. And for some odd reason, they're like, hey, Cody. And I'm like, hey, what's up? There's 20 people you just passed to get to me. And I don't know why they come to me because I'm like, Hannah, I'm not the nicest about it. Or so I don't know.
Because you're the one, the only, the Cody with a K and with a T.
I have a question, and this maybe is for everybody. So I'm looking at all this and I'm saying this stuff's, really good while we're slow. But what about when we're getting slammed and this stuff is happening and they're pulling you in every direction? I know that this all has to do with proactiveness. I feel like that's when most of my issues tend to come out with coaching.
I do the same thing. I get pulled in 1,000 different directions, but I've just got to the point where, I know that obviously, we're customer service in that, but I'm only one person. So like unfortunately, the customer sometimes has to operate on my time. If I'm dealing with something else, I can't go deal with that right away. So I just take the time that I need in order to deal with certain situations. I also move around a lot. Whether it be if I go in the cafe, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go get you guys some crust so you guys don't have to go get it in 10 minutes when you guys run out because you guys are going to forget that you guys ran out of crust. I already know because you guys are children. It's just stuff like that. So.
The echo in the room when two tango in the same room. Yeah, that's a great question, Steph. And honestly, like anything, right? Sometimes you just gotta pull back for a moment and realize you may have to address something in the moment right then. And that coaching conversation comes at a later time, right? Again, to kind of piggyback off what Cody said, trusting your people, empowering them, all these things that we know to do. I would say trust and verify. I think that's really important too, right? Because that's how we make sure that we're not absolving ourselves of the responsibility, right? And I know Cody knows this, but trusting and verifying. But yeah, that coaching conversation doesn't always happen in that moment, but can happen a little bit later on, as long as there's intention to get back to it. I think is really critical, right? Because sometimes the business is moving at such a clip, you just don't have that option to slow down. But again, these don't have to be long-winded conversations.
Yeah, Lance. To like what you said, I don't just trust and not verify.
I know.
Yeah,
I have to say these things. I have to say them out loud.
Right. I mean, I always tell the leads, I'm like, hey, I'd rather you make the decision and it be the wrong decision, and then I coach you about it later, rather than you just come straight to me. Especially when it comes to like team members. We actually just had our meeting, and we had a lead meeting before that, and they're all like, I feel like the team members don't respect us. And I'm like, well, it's because 9 times out of 10, when there's a problem, you come to us straight away. You don't try to solve the problem yourself. So
Right.
I'm sorry. Oh, I think Patrick wants to say something.
Mute yourself. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's we had our lead meeting, and some of our leads, more so than others, were complaining that they didn't feel respected. And I think the exact words were, it sometimes makes them feel as if, mom can't make a decision because mom always has to check with dad, or dad always has to check with mom. We try to schedule leads, up on cash in cafe, where sometimes, let's say there's an injury and we get pulled up to Maine. We can't be, in 7 places at once, and we are trusting them to make those decisions. And then it's being alert, being present, and just being in that frame of mind of just telling them, hey, make a decision. If it's the wrong decision, you're not going to mess something up so bad that we can't help fix it or unravel it or put it back together. We can always fix it. And then, hey, we're going to coach you on it. We're going to show you, hey, you could have handled it this way. We could have worded it that way. And then it also enables them to make decisions that when they come to us and say, hey, I did this, this, and this, we sometimes look at them and they're like, hey, I would have handled it this way. And you actually simplified the process, or, hey, you worded this better than I would have. And so it's not just us coaching them. It's about just having a coaching environment for everyone to be able to learn from, because then you're able to honestly just stoke that fire within the kids. And then they're able to take on more responsibility, and you're able to promote them from team member positions to lead positions to manager positions, and then so on. It's just enabling a real degree of ownership and accountability.
Awesome. Absolutely. No, that's great. It's great. So again, for sake of time, as we approach here, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 1 o'clock your time, for those in Central, these are some of the questions we've gone over, and I love how the lines came alive here. You guys, you've been talking, been sharing. It doesn't have to stop here. Again, what's the real challenge here for you with coaching? It's something that you'll even want to consider as you get off the line here in just a little while. 7 questions. We may not get to all of these necessarily, but we covered the first 3. And again, they don't have to be in that order, although they do build onto each other really well. Possibly in the future call, if you guys find that this call was very helpful, call 14 could be some of these other questions. But really, it doesn't have to just be these 7 questions, although they've been proven time and time again to be very helpful for those that coach. I would say, what question do you think you might use, not just from the 3 we talked about, but maybe a question that was brought up here? A question I use often, just kind of in my my day-to-day, as far as what great questions do you have? A question that I use is often, what would you do? I ask that often, not because I'm trying to absolve myself of responsibility, but I want to get someone thinking, well, what would you do? Or, when someone says, I don't know, I would say, well, what if you did know? Again, having them dive a little further, a little deeper, and not be able to just kind of pivot away from that question and say, oh, well, I'm going to say, I have no idea, so that I get an answer. No, sometimes it's, well, what would you do? Or when they say, I don't know, well, what if you did know? So those are some things I do on my end from great questions, or a couple questions that I think are pretty solid overall and that have proven successful for me in the past. So really, what question do you think you might use of the 3 that we talked about? And then do you have any great questions that you use on a day-to-day basis that you think could be helpful for others to hear? Please feel free to unmute yourself, add it to the chat. That's fine too. But between the 3 questions we talked about and any questions you might have that you use with success, please feel free to share that as we wrap up our time together.
I use the same question as you. It's just worded differently. I just say, if I wasn't here, what would you do?
Yep, it's a good one. We think alike, Cody. What other great questions out there? Or of the three, would you use any of the three? One sticks out to you. I know Hannah said, and what else she would utilize. What about you guys? Is the Kickstarter question very helpful for those that maybe are not as keen to coach? Maybe that's a question you want to utilize in the next week to 2 weeks. Try it out. Maybe it's the focus question, or maybe it's the awe and what else question. Awesome, Daniel. Cool. You'll use the awe question. And then you can just say, hey guys, I have a question. Aw, you can do that. That'd be great. They would enjoy that. All kidding aside. I appreciate the shares coming through. Thank you. And honestly, we don't have to cut the conversation off when this is all said and done. For those that are interested in talking more about it, you can always reach out to me afterwards. I know an hour goes by pretty quick here, but I want to remain cognizant of everyone's time. Yeah, Stephanie, what's on your mind leading into the and what else? Yes, awesome. Yeah, awesome. Very good, very good. Thank you, everyone. Great shares. Keep it coming. All right. And so, who will you decide to coach over the next 2 weeks? You knew we were heading there. Who will you decide to coach? You guys giving thought to it? Do you have a couple names in mind? Could be someone that's on the call. If you're a GM, it could be one of your assistant managers. That's fine too. But who are you going to coach? If you have them in mind, write them down. Let's keep it honest. Let's draw in some intentionality, right? If you have two in mind, feel free to post them in the chat. Why? Because we'll come back to it at some point. That would be great. I love it. Thank you. Have a couple names that were dropped into the chat. Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Cody is going to coach Patrick, and he needs it. And Sky Zone Canton, which is Patrick needs to coach Cody. I love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. They're just coaching each other. I love it. Neither one's going to get on the field. They're literally going to be on the sidelines just coaching each other. Game's going to be playing in front of them. It's going to be great. Leads. Awesome. Yes, leads. Drawing into a really high-end lead program does so much for your business. One of the first things I taught on was really raising the level of quality amongst the lead program in your park. It's a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. Your core modder, Corey, our team lead. That's awesome. Absolutely. Very good. Very good. We got quotes of Steve Young and Joe Montana. Must be really considering that the Lions are going to lose eventually. Oh boy. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Excellent. Appreciate that. All right. So times for action as we wrap up the call, guys. Again, one of the first things that we'll look to is intentionally coach 2 people in the next 2 weeks. If you haven't shared that in the chat, please do. That'd be huge. Because we can go back to it, right? Let's, really keep each other accountable to it. Come to the next call ready to share your 2 coaching sessions, right? And then come to the next call with the worksheet fully filled out. My apologies, I got to it kind of late on my end. I'll try to get it out earlier. But I wanted a little bit of a lighter load. Even if you just did those couple things, which was just coaching 2 people, I'd be fine with that in all honesty, because we do have Thanksgiving week ahead of us. There's a lot of push and pull on the business, right? We're busy, and we're only getting busier from here on out. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining the call. Any questions, comments, or concerns before we get off the line? Any thoughts as to how Canton's going to get anything done if Cody and Patrick are in that room together, just coaching each other the whole time?
You know, we got Amelia, Marissa, and the leads. I think we got it.
He's already figured it in. He's already figured it out. There you go. Excellent. Awesome. In all seriousness, any other questions, concerns? One of the 3 questions that you're going to take with you in this next week or two? Any last impressions?
Don't be that person.
Happy Thanksgiving from Sky Zone Shelby.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat a lot of macaroni and cheese.
It is one of my favorite holidays in that I host it at my home and, at my house. And it's where I get to kind of stretch my hospitality muscle and have, little things that I know certain people really enjoy, certain drinks or whatever. I really enjoy hosting Thanksgiving. It's just getting the house ready and everything is, that's a whole other issue. But I really enjoy hosting it. Well, everyone, have a great Thanksgiving break if we don't talk. Just really appreciate you guys getting on the line. I hope that these calls are helpful. And stay safe out there. Keep it fun. Well, keep it safe, right? Have fun. Fly safe, all that jazz for those in the Sky Zone world. But as we are Innovative Heights guys, let's keep it safe, clean, and fun for every guest each and every day. If you need anything, please reach out. Have a great Thanksgiving if we don't talk between then and now. And guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Great conversation.
Great.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This is probably one of my favorite calls.
Yeah, mine too.